Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today I'm going to be taking a look and kind of doing my predictions on the next up-and-coming ban and restriction update. So Bandai, in usual company fashion, basically made an announcement announcing an announcement. So this is in the form of a new ban and restriction announcement that's going to be taking place on December 18th of 2023. For the English meta, it's going to be effective on March 1st of 2024, and for the Japanese, it's going to be taking effect on January 5th of 2024. So there are a couple of disclaimers that I have to go through when it comes to talking about ban and restrictions. So not every card that I'm going to be listing I'm reasonably expecting to see a hit or limit in some way, shape, or form, but all of the cards that I'm thinking about still are kind of worth mentioning just because of their overall impact on the game as a whole. Most bans and limits are for the Japanese format first and foremost, as we can clearly see with the divide on the effective dates that the next ban and restriction is going to be legal on, and everywhere else is just secondary. So Bandai does have a precedent when it comes to the types of cards that they do try not to hit, which is going to be brand new cards and high rarity cards, because they don't want to impact sales when it comes to sets as much as they possibly can, let alone newer sets as much as they possibly can. Bandai's usual reasonings behind why they generally ban and limit are basically these simple three, where it's just a rebalancing tool just for them to try to fix the game, make things a little bit more fair, or slow things down if something is performing too fast, which is warping the game. Or if something is overperforming as the main second reason, just because they want other decks to have a shot, and it's really hard for players to want to try to play some of the new stuff when the old stuff works just fine. And then the last reason is for them just to try to free up some design space, just because it's really hard for them to make new stuff when the old stuff is already just that strong, so they need to limit the old stuff, freeing up that space for new things to actually be made and not be breaking the game in half. So I personally don't believe in unbanning things, so I'm not going to be talking about any potential unbans, just because my personal philosophy is, well, if it was broken enough to get hit the first time, then it kind of just needs to stay hit, just because it still could be a problematic card. Bandai's not necessarily the best at learning from their past mistakes, in my opinion, just because we've seen some repeated trends when it comes to certain cards being designed and effects being made that are making certain decks overperform. So with all of the disclaimers out of the way, what are the actual problems with the game? Well, since BT14 continuing through EX5 and going into BT15, purple has just become more and more of a dominating color, at least according to the Japanese data in the game, thanks to Apocalypse, Anubismon, Metal Garurumon X, and Lugamon. So out of the top 10 current decks in Japan, 6 of them are purple decks, or at least using part purple, which only goes to show that the last ban and restriction update to try to keep Metal Garurumon, Anubis, and Apocalypse in check didn't exactly work the way they thought it would, and the decks are still performing just as strong compared to the rest of the game. So Metal Garurumon X does have a blue base, so I do have to note that it seems like there's less of a reason to run the purple base compared to the blue base, so there's just a natural transition point for Metal Garurumon, and Lugamon, thanks to the power of some of the other decks, especially the other decks that are utilizing purple, seem to be falling off in favor. So it's not like other colors aren't able to win. There's still a whole bunch of other good decks that are able to keep up. It's just they're not able to keep up as well as some of the other purple decks. But Shine Greymon, Red Black Greymon, Bloom Lord, and Yellow Vaccine are just a few examples of decks that are still performing well in Japan that are not purple. So let's just get into the actual ban predictions. So just like last time, my wild card ban prediction is going to want to see Apocalypse get banned. I don't think limiting this card is really that great of an idea because of the design space that he takes up for the deck that he's played in, where it's kind of an all or nothing deal. You either have access to all 4 of them, or you're just better off not playing the deck, which means you just are better off seeing the card get banned to incentivize you not even attempting to play the deck, which only impacts a good portion of BT 15 just because a lot of the cards are built and used specifically for Apocalymon. But I want to see Apocalymon get banned because I don't like this card. I think this card is a complete design mistake, and it's a really powerful card warping the game, making it less fun and interactive. So what Apocalymon is doing is that he's just trying to utilize a really powerful cycling engine, mostly coming from the Garurumon package along with Analog Youth and whatever tools that the deck is going to be using to replace Eismon Scatter Mode to try to make it as fast and consistent with its setup as it possibly can, which it's already succeeding at even with the current limitations, just because there are just enough tools for him to have suitable replacements to make sure that he can keep it on pace with what he was trying to do before. And this card just really isn't super fun just because of how fast the deck can move on setting up Apocalymon, and it's not like Apocalymon is actually going to be attacking the opponent. He's actually just trying to mill the opponent and reduce the amount of interaction that the opponent has with you, so that way Apocalymon could just sit there and mill the opponent out, reutilizing level 6 on play effects that he reasonably shouldn't have access to. So from a design space perspective, he's eating up the limitations that they have to make when designing level 6 Digimon, let alone level 6 Digimon with good on-play effects, because now they're always going to have to think, can Apocalymon use it, and does Apocalymon want to use it? And that's usually a question you don't want to always have to ask yourself. And Apocalymon also has a compounding issue where even if you're able to deal with Apocaly, everything's just going to go back into the trash, which is where he pulled everything out to begin with, so they could just reset up a new Apocaly, making it very hard to just deal with him in general. So I think that as a result, just Apocalymon is not a very healthy card. I know this card probably isn't going to get banned, but I still would like to see him banned anyway. The next card on the list is something I think is actually more reasonable and probably something we're going to see coming, which is going to be the limitation on EX5, Garurumon X Antibody. So seeing this card hit to 1 isn't necessarily that unreasonable, considering Greymon X Antibody from BT11 was just better than its predecessor in every way, shape, and form, and this is basically mirroring that type of design. This is also enabling a lot of decks to want to use the Garurumon package to be able to cycle through its deck as quickly as it possibly can, finding the parts and pieces it needs, and setting up the ones that it wants in the trash in there very easily for very little effort at all, making him just one of the best cards currently in the game, and one of the primary reasons why a lot of decks are running the Garurumon package, just to try to utilize this card because of how strong it is at setting everything up. And it's not like limiting this card is going to hurt Garurumon that much, just because they at least still have the old Garurumon X Antibody that they can use in its place, and limiting this card is more to try to bring purple as a whole back in line with the rest of the colors. And then the next card that I wouldn't mind seeing get some form of limitation is something from the Mervamon package. So I don't necessarily care if it's a Mervamon itself or Ignitemon. I just think the combination of the two is still just really, really strong and potentially problematic, especially in the Anubismon deck, which is proving itself to be insanely strong, utilizing her just because Anubismon can play out Mervamon basically for free, and then Mervamon comes out with even more bodies, making it very hard for the opponents to respond with all of that pressure coming out of nowhere that reasonably shouldn't have been there to begin with. So I think that Mervamon is the more likely card that I would want to get hit, but I can definitely see why people would want Ignitemon just because Mervamon is a higher rarity card and is less likely to get hit, while Ignitemon still kind of is enabling a lot of combo potential that purple has as a whole. But I think that Mervamon is the more problematic card, so it's kind of hard to just figure out which one that they would limit, which is why I wouldn't mind seeing one or both of them get limited as a result. And then the next cards I wouldn't mind see limited in some way, shape, or form is going to be either Cool Boy and or Analog Youth. So these are both white tamers that are two-costed searching tools, which we already know based on the training cards. Two-cost searching tools are just really, really good at not only just their efficiency, but what they're trying to dig for. These tamers are doing some slightly different things, but still are kind of filling that same type of role on being that 2-drop consistency tool. So Cool Boy's interacting with X antibodies and the X antibody mechanic, allowing you to be able to dig out those types of cards and accelerate your overall game plan even further when utilizing that mechanic properly to be able to put yourself ahead of the opponent in the amount of tempo and resources that you could be generating. Analog Youth, as of late, has been proven to be really problematic, especially in purple decks, because it's a way to easily dig out the cards that you're looking for while filling up your trash at the same time, and the fact that we have more cards interacting with the raising area only makes his secondary effect, which isn't as good as Cool Boy's secondary effect, even better. But those are pretty much my big cards that I want to see banned and limited. I don't necessarily think past those. The game is really in that bad of a state. I think that the game is currently really fun and exciting, and there are just a couple of things that I kind of wouldn't mind seeing hit in some way, shape, or form, but I don't realistically think is going to be happening. So I wouldn't mind seeing the training cards get limited to 1, just because, as I mentioned before, 2-cost consistency tools are just really, really powerful, especially with a good upside, only increasing your overall momentum and tempo, so that way you have easier ways to be able to respond. That might not necessarily sound like a bad thing, but if you're using them proactively, it makes it sometimes actually harder to respond with, because with how high power the game could potentially be, it only enables and allows OTK decks to be that much stronger. So I also think that with the overall increase in power and potential, that's why I wouldn't mind seeing Hidden Potential Discovered actually get banned, just because it's doing, again, that same type of thing where it's only accelerating the game to an unhealthy level when you see it. And then Emissary of Hope, even though Yellow has been down in the dumps for quite a while, and this looked like, the actual only hope that Yellow had in order to be able to survive and compete, it's doing something very similar to Hidden Potential Discovered, where the amount of tempo that this card is giving is borderline insane and can only be more powerful and problematic the further the game goes, which is something that the game doesn't necessarily need, is certain things performing too fast, which is currently where purple is because the new tools that it got over the past couple of sets just accelerates it over all of the other colors. Sure, it might not seem like Emissary Hope is that bad right now, but it has the potential to be a problem, just like Hidden Potential Discovered in the past, in the future. So Bandai seems to have a really bad habit on making the same mistake again with certain effects that they tend to be printing. Most of the time it involves strong levels of combo play, letting decks operate too fast, utilizing their high level Digimon. Digimon is a game where it rewards more proactive play rather than reactive play, so it is nice that it does increase the amount of reactive play that the game could potentially have at the cost of supporting OTK based decks, just because it's easier to try to kill the opponent in one go before they can respond and react, which is where the game currently is sitting at in terms of the decks that are actually doing well and performing. But that's kind of my general rundown on some of the cards that I wouldn't mind seeing banned or limited when it comes to the game overall.